listening virtually.
Nathan Phillips, I was wondering, I didn't catch why the term ratepayer is not favored. I'm a ratepayer. And customer, yeah, and customer can mean corporate customer, but or another customer, but ratepayer is very specific. I think.
That was me. I guess because ratepayer sound.
Yeah, so people online can hear.
Okay.
I believe I said that was one of my personal hang-ups, because ratepayer sounds very passive. We get to do whatever we want to do and you pay for it, and customer sounds more like the customers are making a choice. I think that's the reason, whether you accept that or not.
Do you think that ratepayer is more active than consumer? And if you think that customer is better than consumer, should the name of the Consumer Liaison Group be changed to Customer Liaison Group, perhaps?
To me, consumer sounds like human beings and customer includes companies, but I don't, that's up to you what you call yourself. I mean, when I think of consumer, I think of a person, but now we're getting into the English language and the peccadillos of how people hear words. But, yeah.
Any questions for Anne?
Right there. And then right here in Greg.
When you were talking about the tabletop exercise, you mentioned, as if it were truly extreme, that you might consider conservation measures. Why is that considered a radical solution in dire circumstances and not what we should be using all the time?
So, great question. So, in our market, we already account for energy efficiency, and so that is already taken into consideration. We also include demand response in the market. So those things are already captured through the market. So there's a chunk of that. Then, if we were looking at the system and we saw something coming at us, going to consumers to ask for conservation, you don't want to do it very often because it can result in consumer fatigue, and they won't respond. So you really need to kind of look at the situation and make sure that it's something that has gotten to that point of asking the public to conserve to help that situation. In the winter, which is the season that we have most concerns about, that can be even harder than in the summer months, where in the summer it's somewhat easier to reduce your usage. In the winter, that can be challenging. And so we look at that and we take that very seriously. And if we're calling on it, it's because we see that there's going to be a major issue, reliability-wise, on the system. I'm going to go here. Oh, sorry.
Oh, so that does not at all refer to then the emergency of the UN saying we're entering climate hell.
So we're looking at the reliability of the system to ensure that our system doesn't collapse and potentially take down other neighboring systems. And really, in the winter, you've got to be incredibly careful with that because it could potentially take days, weeks to bring the system back. And so we're going to be doing everything we can to head off that kind of event. So here.
Hi, Roy Harvey. I'm a consumer and a rooftop solar producer in Massachusetts. Just a question on the vision statement. It refers to clean energy. I wonder what you include in clean energy beyond wind and solar. Thank you.
It's a great question. So a lot of that is dependent on what the states have identified as clean or renewable in their renewable portfolio standards. But then we also would look at, as I think Cheryl mentioned, non-carbon emitting resources. And that is something that, as we're looking at meeting decarbonization requirements, we're going to look at those types of resources. That doesn't mean that we are promoting particular resources. We don't do that. We make sure that our markets are open for those resources to compete and that we are kind of capturing those resources that are coming forward. So it's primarily the renewables that have been identified by the states, which I think some states do include tidal, and then other non-emitting, non-carbon emitting resources. Mm-hmm.
Last one.
Back up. The people watching out there in cyberspace can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thanks. I'm Lee. I'm a ratepayer. I think if I was choosing who was managing our grid, this is what I would choose, but this is what we have. I have a question about the demand response piece that you mentioned. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand it is in your full capacity market, let's receive for capacity payments to be peaker plants in the need of enhanced electricity on the grid. And there are also entities that get payments to conserve energy when there's a need for more reliability on the grid. So my question is about the order of which that happens. I've been doing a lot of research into this. You know, we can tell when a peaker plant turns on because we can go and see it on your website. We can look at it. It has been really hard for us ratepayers to understand when that piece of conservation demand response is being activated. And so we're wondering, does that happen first, or do you ask the peaker plants to turn on and then go to the demand response? Or does the demand response piece of conservation happen first? How often do you use it? Yeah, the people that are getting payments to conserve their energy is what I'm talking about.
So great question, and you combined several ideas in your question. So the capacity market procures all types of resources to meet the capacity need for the system 3 years in the future. That can include supply side resources and demand side resources. In the energy market, which determines what runs day to day, there's a day ahead bidding process, and then there's the real-time energy market. A few years ago, and Cheryl would probably know the exact year, they took a lot of the demand response and made it price responsive demand response, which really pushed it into the energy market and allowed demand response, they can still participate in the capacity market, but allowed demand response to set the price that they would be called on. So they set their price. Oftentimes, if you're a demand response provider, you don't want to interrupt whether it's your business process or whatever it is, you don't want it to interrupt too often, so you might have a higher price that you're putting in. So the market would have to get to that high price for them to be called on. We saw last year in January, the highest amount of that price responsive demand. It was a cold day in January where the market price did go high and they were called on. But even that highest amount is still a relatively small amount. And so that's something that we continue to think about. The market dynamics don't seem to be favorable for a lot of demand response. And so it's something that we continue to have a lot of discussions about, and making sure that our markets are open for that, but just understanding what are the market dynamics that might be at play to allow those resource owners, the demand response owner, to say when they want to be interrupted. I think we can show you maybe some places where you might be able to find that information on our website. So I'll be happy to talk to you offline.
Thank you, Ann.
All right, thank you.
Okay, well, my fascinator's back on. I've got some royals to see. But before we go, I just wanted to take a little bit of time to thank all of you for coming, and thank especially Commissioner Danley, Chair LaFleur, and Ann, and also Brooke from the board for joining us today. I think it's really great for the consumers to not only share their voices, but know that their voice is being heard. So thank you so much for being here. As we close out the year, I would be remiss if I didn't send my great thanks to my partners at ISO New England for helping plan this day. My colleague Adriana and I work on the back end, and then ISO helps to make sure that we have this space and a functioning WebEx. So thank you, Eric, Nick, Chris, Debbie, Pete, and the rest of the ISO New England team. You guys always step up and really help us, so thank you. And as a reminder, you have a survey in your email box, so please don't hesitate to fill that out robustly so that the new coordinating committee has something to read in the next couple of weeks and to help us plan and goal set for 2023. I failed epically in getting on Twitter today, so I will tweet later. I took detailed notes to capture some of this day. But again, we are on Twitter, and you can follow us there. Again, it's CLG_NE. Not great at Twittering, but who is at this point? And last but not least, we do have election results. We will have a new vibrant community committee starting in January. We've got Jacob, Hank, myself, Drew Landry, Don Crease, Ian McDonald, Regina Spector. That's a singer. We're going to have to talk later. Are you the singer? Kendra Ford, Nathan Phillips, Sonia Berthzill. We'll also talk about how I can pronounce her name properly. Gus Frometh and Bill Dornbus. So we've got 12 dynamic members, and we look forward to working with them. I hope all of you that came here to hear from the commissioner and to vote will participate and participate robustly in the future. And I will take a point of personal privilege to say my heartfelt thanks to Bob Rio and Mary Smith, who have been on CLG since the beginning and have been terrific mentors to me. So thank you, and thank you for your participation. Thank you. I have some more to say.